You have given a heads up about the fact that you are going to leave as leader. Unfortunately, what that does is put a shadow over your leadership, doesn't it?
No, not at all. I'm not feeling that at the conference. I mean, it surely is fairly professional to have sensible succession planning. I've said there is a series of tasks that we have to do and I have to do. We have to see our way through the whole Brexit controversy. There may well be an early general election. I want to see us into that, through it and the other side. There are May elections next year. There are these reforms to be done. I've said, you know, when I've done that, I will move on to the next generation.
You're not running a bank. You're running a major political party. Nobody in politics ever likes uncertainty. And what you've created is just a massive amount of uncertainty because nobody's sure in your party, as you stand up to address them this week, whether you will be the guy who actually leads the party into the next election. So let's try and remove the uncertainty. Will you be Labour leader?
Liberal Democrat leader.
I'm sorry, you might be Labour leader. We don't know, do we?
That's a good point.
Will you be Liberal Democrat leader?
Well, who knows? Yes.
Will you be? You might be Labour leader. Stranger things have happened. But will you be Liberal Democrat leader at the next general election? Will you fight the next election for your party?
Well, if there is an election in the wake of Brexit, and there may well be, then I am the leader and I will lead us into it and past it. If you're talking about 4 years hence, you know, who knows? I mean, the world is a massively uncertain place. I'm not creating the uncertainty.
You just created it,
simply
Vince.
Setting a series of objectives for me and for our party.
You just said, who knows? Your job is to remove uncertainty. You just said the world is an uncertain place, but the one certain thing can be of a party leader saying, if there's an election in 4 years' time, I will be leader. That's what normal people say in your position.
Well, I know that may be the standard political patter, but it probably doesn't make a great deal of sense in the world in which we actually live. And I'm just trying to be sensible and professional.
It doesn't make sense for the leader of a party to tell his party faithful, I will be your leader at the next election. How can that not make sense?
Well, it's a way of putting it, and indeed, if there is an election coming in the near future, and there may well be, then I'm here to lead us into it. But I can't predict what the world will be like in 4 years' time.
I'm not asking you to predict anything, Vince.
The proposal
So Vince,
that we have a different way of choosing leaders whenever we have that choice.
I'm not asking you to predict anything. Obviously, the world is unpredictable. Obviously, politics is unpredictable. But what I do know from 30 years of being involved in political journalism is that when a party leader is unable to say if they will be the leader come the next normal general election outside of, you know, Brexit or whatever, then people immediately begin to speculate about who the leader will be. So your power and your authority, it's a bit like it's like a football manager who says, look, I'm not going to be the manager in 3 years' time. The players stop playing for that manager when he says that. Everybody knows this.
Well, I'm sorry, but that is not the way it is. I think it is very unlikely, extremely unlikely, that Theresa May or Jeremy Corbyn will be leading their parties in 2022. I mean, I'm just dealing with the reality of the world it is. And I think your approach to it, which is, of course, a traditional way of putting it, may simply be wrong.
So just to clarify one more time, let's try and get this thing. By not saying you're going to be the leader, are we safe to assume you probably will not be Liberal Democrat leader in
2020?
2020, say, 2022?
I think that is a sensible and reasonable assumption, yes.
Right, OK, so we've got to the answer, which is basically, it's not uncertain. You don't intend to lead the party until the next election, do you? That's the bottom line. Why don't you spit it out?
Well, I think it's unlikely if it is 2022, and the same position is true of Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn. They're doing their job. I think it's very unlikely. I think probably I have a longer period in office than either of them.
The trouble is they haven't set the detonator, have they?
Particular problems in the short run. Yes, well, maybe they should, and remove some of the uncertainty around their parties.
The problem is,
I've set myself a series of objectives, and I'm going to deal with them.
Right, all that happens, though, the problem you've got as a party, surely, is that all that happens by you saying what you've said and by leaving it so uncertain, that becomes the only story in town. The only story anybody wants to talk to you about in Liberal Democrat Conference Week is not all the plans you have for the party. It's about you and whether you're going to be leader. And that's why I don't understand why you think it's perfectly normal and sensible of you to create all this uncertainty. It's had the opposite effect.
Well, I mean, you're describing a conference which isn't actually happening. I mean, we are focused on real problems. And, you know, the conference today is completely dominated by Brexit and how we deal with it and how we fight it and the people's vote. They're not actually talking about me. I'm giving my big speech tomorrow, and I'll set out a vision about how things should evolve in future. And that is perfectly normal. And I think the problems you're describing are in your imagination, not in reality.
Every single paper today isn't running you and your ambitious plans as a story. They're running headlines like Lib Dems must own failures, says favourite to be the next leader. In other words, they're swirling with all the speculation about who the next leader's going to be, not about what you have to say as a leader tomorrow in your speech.
Well, I don't think it's at all bad that, you know, the next generation of people should be showing us their talents. I mean, I'm not feeling in any way threatened by that. I think it's extremely healthy. We've got some very good people, and they've got interesting things to say. So why shouldn't they?
I think it's probably... I wonder if you think it might be a mistake, because there is a constituency of people at the moment who do not feel served by the Conservative Party and what many see as a shambles of negotiations. I mean, even amongst their own government, people feel perhaps they don't have a natural home in the Labour Party, and a lot of people, voters, might be confused about what Jeremy Corbyn's doing. There seems for a lot of anti-Brexiteers that the Liberal Democrats would be a natural home for them at the moment, and yet you do not seem to be picking up that support, and you've already set the end timer on your own leadership. What can you do to try and galvanise and attract those people who should be swelling your ranks at the moment?
Well, you made a very good case for people to join us, and actually they are. Since I took over, we haven't actually had a national election, but locally we're doing extremely well, you know, brilliantly well. Our poll rating is not as high as I would like it to be, but it's increased by 50% since I took over. And the issue on which I think most people in politics are focused is on Brexit, and in our case, on the negatives around Brexit and having a people's vote. And we're winning that argument. You can see what it's happening. And I'm putting forward some reforms to the way my own party functions, which will hopefully attract some of those millions of people you're talking about. It already is. I mean, we've now got a rapidly growing membership of 100,000, supporter base of 200,000. It's growing at tens of thousands a month at the moment. You know, we're motoring. There's a lot more to do, and I'm here to do it.
Coming back to the leadership, whether it might be a sensible, because perhaps those people think, well, we've already got a leader of this party who says he's not going to carry on. Whether it might be a sensible move, because you talk about things being sensible, to step aside and let someone like Jo Swinson take the reins. Or, I know you're changing the rules, perhaps, allow someone like Gina Miller to become leader of the party. What would you think about that?
Well, I'm not promoting any particular individual, but it doesn't seem to be at all unhealthy to have a discussion about who should be leading us in 5 or 10 years' time. I mean, I'm very much open for that discussion. All I'm saying is I'm doing a bit of sensible succession planning while leading us through these immediate challenges around Brexit, an early general election, local elections, these big reforms. I mean, we are making progress. I want us to make much more progress, and I'm content with where we are. And I think if you're actually here, you discover that far from all the negativity you're describing, there's a really good, positive feeling about this conference.
Why do you want to tax people's Christmas presents?
Sorry, I missed that.
Why do you want to tax people's Christmas presents?
It's a headline in The Sun today.
Liberal Democrats plan tax on Christmas gifts.
Oh, no, well, I think the reason I didn't answer your question, I didn't understand it. I mean, what we're actually suggesting is taking up a proposal that has been widely recognised, that actually inheritance tax is not a very good tax and you should get rid of it. Large numbers of people simply don't pay it anyway, and it is actually much better to have a taxation on receipts of unearned income above a certain level. We're not talking about Christmas presents. Do you
intend that people would pay tax on gifts worth £3,000 or more at the same rate as income tax?
No. We're not talking about low-level gifts of that kind. We're talking about much larger sums. And this system works very well in Ireland as an alternative to inheritance tax.
What level are you talking about?
We're suggesting it would be sensible here. I'm not fixing a tax. We've said there has to be a threshold which is substantial. And when I do the costings for the manifesto that we're producing, that we will come up with a concrete number.
But what does that mean? You can say anything. I mean, is it 3,000? Is it 3 million? What is it?
Well, we're establishing the principle, and the principle includes having a high threshold.
But you can't tell us what that is.
You know, we're some way from a general election. We're some way from a general election. When we get to it, we will do the detailed arithmetic about what these proposals actually mean. We've got a whole series of
Right, we've already established you're not going to be there at the general election, so I need to get this answer in quick.
No, we haven't established that at all. If we haven't established that at all, if there's a general election in the near future, we will have a manifesto. It will have detailed costings in it, and it will describe in detail what that particular proposal means. I'm just establishing the principle at the moment.
I get the principle, but would the threshold be? Would it be like nearer 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, or 1 million? What would be the nearest, do you think?
Well, it would be in the middle of that range, but I'm not putting a number on it at the moment. That would be a foolish thing to do. No, I'm not giving you an exact number.
You just said it would be in the middle of the range.
When our manifesto is drawn up, I'm not giving you a precise number because when the manifesto is drawn up, we'll do the specific arithmetic.
That's $500,000.
Well, notionally, that would be a sensible place to think about.
$500,000.
No, I'm not giving you a precise number. What I'm telling you is that when the manifesto is done, we will do specific costings on it.
So it would be about $500,000.
He's not giving you a precise answer.
No, you're coming up with a figure out of the air. I'm not being precise about it. I'm just giving you a notional. You started off with a silly comment about people taxing people's Christmas presents. I don't think any of this is silly. Which is obviously nonsense.
I don't think you taxing people on their gifts is silly.
We will work from where we are.
OK, but what is halfway then?
We're not taxing people's Christmas presents.
Well, let's have a maths question then. What's halfway between 10,000 and 1 million?
Well, if we're talking about round about $500,000, I have no idea what the exact sum we are going to specify. I just said 5 times already, you know, when the manifesto is drawn up, we'll do the specific costings and what it means and what the revenue comes out of it. The principle of taxing wealth efficiently and fairly is what we're trying to achieve.